Hey everyone, welcome to Plants and Politics. I have an update to share about one of Trump's Capitol insurrectionists. It's time for an episode of Where Are They Now?
Matthew Bledsoe was arrested.
Patrick Montgomery was in court.
Jonathan Manapa will stay in federal custody.
No, I don't take responsibility at all.
So before I jump into this, I just wanted to tell everyone who has donated a big chunk of money or maybe signed up for the BFF monthly subscription. Books are going out this week. This is my book. So What the Fork? The Secret Cause of Disease. You guys are going to be getting this soon. It'll be going out in the mail this week. So look for that. Now to jump in, 72-year-old Army veteran and Alabama resident Lonnie Coffman was seen in photos. He was walking around near the Capitol with other election deniers. However, he didn't actually enter the Capitol. However, his vehicle was parked in an area that had been roped off after they discovered those bombs that were near the DNC and the RNC buildings. So when police were sweeping the area, they saw Coffman's truck and they peered in the window because they were looking in all the vehicles, and they saw he had a gun on his seat, on the passenger seat. So when Coffman was finally able to reach his truck, it was surrounded by cops. And they were in his truck. They found a lot of disturbing items in his vehicle, including weapons and explosives. The officers then searched Coffman himself, and they found that he was carrying two guns. He was carrying a loaded 9mm handgun and a loaded .22 caliber revolver in his pockets. Inside the truck, they found a ton of stuff. They found another 9mm handgun. They found an M4 assault rifle. They found numerous magazines that were loaded with ammunition. There was a cooler filled with 11 homemade Molotov cocktails in mason jars. There were lighters and rags for those Molotov cocktails, a crossbow with bolts, they said, machetes, camouflage smoke devices, and for good measure, a stun gun. The authorities said that none of the weapons were registered in Coffman's name, by the way. And in addition to the weapons, they found some notes, some handwritten notes on several papers inside of his truck, which indicated, they said that he was going through some financial issues. They also said that in these letters, you could see he was obsessed with right-wing racist views and these fear-based talking points, things you see nightly on Faux News Channel and, OANN, those kind of shows. On one piece of paper, they found the name of a Democratic representative named Andre Carson, and Coffman wrote that he was, quote, one of two Muslims in the House of Reps. Coffman also wrote that the military was preparing to carry out a, quote, communist purge as, quote, good guys. And there were also notes with the alleged phone numbers of Texas militia members. There was supposedly contact information for Senator Ted Cruz and right-wing media personalities Sean Hannity and Mark Levin. So when Coffman was questioned by the police, he admitted that he filled these mason jars up, and he said he filled them with melted styrofoam and gasoline. So bomb experts are saying that this combination is particularly dangerous, they said, because it sticks to whatever it hits or whatever it lands on after it explodes. Essentially, this is homemade napalm. So investigators went and they searched Coffman's home after this, and then they found at his home 12 additional explosive devices. So needless to say, Coffman was arrested. He was arrested on January 7th. He was indicted later on charges of possession of an unregistered firearm under federal law, carrying a pistol without a license, carrying a rifle or shotgun, possession of a large capacity feeding device, possession of an unregistered firearm under DC law, and unlawful possession of ammunition. And then Coffman was also charged separately in the state of Alabama for additional charges of possession of an unregistered firearm and possession of explosive devices. So again, needless to say, he was held without bail. They considered him to be a threat. He was facing literally, decades in prison. I mean, basically a life sentence. And then following his arrest, it was revealed that he was having some mental health issues. He actually had signed over power of attorney to his ex-wife and his sister in June of 2020. And they said that he was taking multiple prescription medications for his mental health illness, which of course likely played a role in his Fox News indoctrination. So in November, Coffman pleaded guilty. He pleaded guilty to one federal count of possession of an unregistered firearm, and then also one count of carrying a pistol without a license. That was in regard to the January 6 charges in DC. Then, in regard to the state charges, he also pleaded guilty at the same time to one count of possession of an unregistered firearm. Now, even with a plea deal, Coffman was looking at a maximum of up to 15 years in prison and over $250,000 in fines for the federal charges. And then he was facing an additional 10 years and $250,000 in fines for the state charges. Well, during his plea hearing, Coffman told the judge, I never intended to use the Molotov cocktails. And plus, I didn't even think they would go off. The gasoline was 3 years old, so I didn't even think it would ignite. And then in a handwritten letter that he sent to the judge, this was a pre-sentencing letter, Coffman wrote that he went to DC to, quote, try and discover just how true and secure was the election on November 3rd, 2020. I mean, I don't know, guy. 60 plus judges laughed Trump's minions out of court. So you could have saved yourself a trip, could have saved yourself a federal prison sentence. Just try watching something else. Try turning the channel. Anyway, I digress. At the sentencing hearing, Coffman refused to say why he brought the weapons and these explosives to the Capitol. U.S. District Judge Colleen Collar-Cotelli, that is a mouthful, she presided over Coffman's case. She's actually been one of the toughest in regard to sentencing. She sentenced so far the majority of her January 6 defendants to prison or jail time. Well, in court, she questioned him about, why did you do this? Why did you bring all this? She said, quote, the key unanswered question for me, which probably won't be able to be answered, is what was the purpose of driving all the way from Alabama to DC with these destructive items in his possession? So neither Coffman or his attorney bothered to offer up any kind of explanation. However, Coffman did say, quote, I wish that I had stayed at home. That really was the closest he came to an apology. In anything that I looked at and read or heard about this case, it does not appear that he has really any remorse other than the fact that he got caught and, maybe this wasn't the best idea to go there with weapons. Yeah. He apparently, though, had tears in his eyes when he was talking with the judge at the sentencing hearing, and he told the judge that he got COVID while he was in jail, and his attorney was arguing for leniency based on his age because he's a Vietnam vet, and then also because he doesn't have any criminal history. So Coffman's attorney asked the judge to give him time served, which would be the 14 months that he's already served. He's already been in jail this whole time. But prosecutors said, given his handwritten notes, specifically mentioning certain lawmakers, he mentioned a judge in one of them. He referred to these people as, quote, bad guys. They say, no, we know why he was there. He was going to use this arsenal to kill lawmakers and to potentially kill others, maybe this judge. So they were asking for a sentence of 41 months. Now that falls in between the federal sentencing guidelines alone, which are 37 to 46 months for these crimes. It's also just below the combined state and federal guideline, which is 46 to 57 months total. Judge Kalar Kotelly said, I recognize, I can appreciate the mitigating factors, his age, his service to the country, and whatnot. But she said there's a need to deter others, quote, who would consider coming to DC to do this around residences and government buildings. So after all was said and done, she sentenced Coffman to 46 months in prison, so just under 4 years, and then she gave him 3 years of probation after he serves that time. So with his time served, he has another 32 months behind bars. Honestly, this could be a life sentence for him, given his age and given his health issues. I hope he gets some psychological help that he obviously needs while he's in prison. I hope that, all the other cases out there will go before Judge Kalar Kotelly, because, I think this was just. I think if you're going to go to these lengths, you had a purpose. I don't think the prosecutors are wrong here. You don't go to all of this effort without the intention of potentially using some of these weapons and some of these explosives. Now, what I find interesting, though, is that Coffman is, I believe, the third person to get jail or prison time who didn't actually enter the Capitol. There was Cleveland Meredith Jr. There was another, he was another guy from down south. He brought a bunch of weapons. He wasn't at the Capitol because he had car trouble. He had, a bunch of ammo with him. He threatened, you guys might remember, he threatened the lives of Nancy Pelosi, also the DC mayor, Muriel Bowser. He got a long sentence, even though he wasn't actually at the Capitol. And then there was another man whose name escapes me. It was a Black man. He had made interstate threats, and he was in DC as well, like Coffman, but he never actually left his hotel room. Now, what I think did him in and why he got such a long prison sentence was that he had an extensive criminal history. He had 19 previous convictions. Don't get me wrong. I think the judge made the right call in Coffman's case. But, as I always question with the weak sentences of some of the people who actually entered the Capitol, some of the people who actually took part in terrorizing the people inside the building. It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. Just make it make sense. That's all I ask. Is that too much to ask? Anyway, guys, if I hear any more, I'll let you know. Thanks so much for watching and listening. Take care, and I'll talk with you soon.